So hello there and welcome back to the channel. This is Mule's Gaming, here with the first Deer Hunter 2005 video that is going to be going on the channel. Now I do hope to do a series of Deer Hunter 2005 videos, and we are going to be starting off by taking a look at several record book mule deer bucks that I have actually managed to harvest. We're starting off with this guy here, which has an estimate of 189. He's a 10-point typical and he looks pretty darn impressive. This was actually one of the first deer I harvested in this game. As soon as I got onto this game, I set it to the highest difficulty, as I had read that that gave you a better chance of coming across trophy bucks, and it's been going pretty darn well so far. Now, just waited for this guy to turn broadside here, and then took a shot with my custom 300, and as you can see, he drops on the spot. We get the nice bullet cam, which is such a cool feature of this game. I really like it. Getting those drop shots is so satisfying with having that cam. So yeah, really awesome. But taking a look at this guy on the ground, he's got such a huge spread, not incredibly long tines, but just a massive frame. A really impressive looking buck. Sort of a brownish colour fur, very nice looking animal. Picking him up and he scores 188.710, so a little bit lower than what his estimate actually was, but pretty close to it, and a very nice record book buck. Moving on to the next deer, and we have another record book buck. This guy though looks completely different. A lot more mass in his frame, and he does have a higher estimate of 191. Now I really like how this guy looks. That is a seriously impressive looking mule deer. The length on those tines and just that frame is really cool. But notice how he has a brow tine on one side and not on the other. That is something that is so cool about this game, is that the racks are almost never perfectly even, which is far more realistic than seeing a perfectly even rack. So really cool to see this actually, shown in this game. Now, just waiting here as he's walking along, and I was just waiting until I felt comfortable to take a shot. I know that you don't have to actually lead with shots in this game from what I've read, as there's no actual sort of time difference between when you pull the trigger and when the bullet arrives from what I've seen online. So I was trying not to lead, which is kind of instinctual from playing other hunting games, and just sort of put the bullet exactly where I wanted it to go, or put the crosshairs exactly where I want the bullet to go rather. But it ended up working out perfectly, and we dropped this guy on the spot. So much mass in those tines. A really impressive looking buck. A lighter sort of brown coat, and he scores 198.208, so a much bigger buck than the previous one. And like I said, he had a lot more mass, so I wonder if that contributed to that higher score. Moving on to the next buck, and once again we have another record book buck. This guy has an estimate of 199, he's a 10-point typical, and he has a huge frame with some really long tines. Not a lot of mass, but just an incredible looking frame. That's a very impressive buck. And I love the fact that we do have a spotting scope in this game, and we can get really nice up-close looks at these deer, because I think they look really cool. Even though this is an older game and obviously has older graphics, I really like getting the close-up looks at these animals the same as I do with the more modern hunting games. Once again, we get another clean drop shot there, and it's funny because you can see that actually where we take the shot, the vegetation hasn't rendered in, but then when we get the bullet cam and actually walk over to pick up this guy, we obviously have a bush, and he dropped right in this bush. Thankfully, because we did drop him on the spot, I just walked straight over to where he was, but otherwise I think he would have been difficult to locate. This guy scores 190.039, so a pretty decent sized buck, not our biggest, but a good sized deer. Now, moving on to the next record book buck, and we have an interesting one. This guy is only an 8-point typical, so less tines than the other bucks that we've looked at so far in this video, but still has a really good sized frame, and a lot of mass carrying up through that frame as well. You can see it going up through those main beams and into those tines. It's a lot less spindly than a couple of the other record book bucks that we've seen so far in this video. And, I'm pretty sure that the mass and everything does does impact the score when looking at the score sheets, so that kind of does make sense. Once again, getting that drop animation, which is so cool to see. I love the bullet cam. And by the way, in this video, if I say anything that isn't completely correct, feel free to correct me in the comments. I'm not an expert on this game by far, I have only just started playing, so you can always feel free to give me more information or correct me on anything. Picking this guy up, he is a 195.922 scoring deer, so one of our bigger bucks, which is really interesting seeing as he was only an 8 point. And again, I think that that's something really cool about this game, is it's not all about deer having so many tines and stuff like you'll see in more modern hunting games. Having just a really solid frame with a lot of mass can get a really high score, which is really cool. Moving on to the next buck, and this guy has an estimate of 197, another really good size record book buck. This guy has a more grey coat and he's very, very pretty. It's really cool that there are the different coat colours in this game, and something you may notice is that the bucks are also different body sizes, which is so cool to actually see. Now, I took that shot and I felt pretty good about it, so I was kind of confused when I didn't get the bullet cam, and then I watched where this buck went, and he only went, like, not very far, only really a few meters from where we actually shot him, and then he drops. That was hardly any distance that he covered at all, and I was really glad that we still were able to see where he went down, because I know that tracking in this game can be really difficult. Now, he has a really good size frame, again with a lot of mass, which is going to help his score, and he actually scores 197.008. Like I said, he had a really good size frame with a lot of mass. Looking at the score sheets, the mass does have an impact, which is so cool to see. So, just a fantastic deer. Now, moving on to the next record book buck, this guy has an estimate of 187, and he's quite uneven. He's an 11 point typical, but you can see like one side is quite a bit sort of bigger than the other. It's really, really interesting to see this sort of thing in game. And something else that's really cool about this guy, hopefully you guys will be able to see it, is that he actually has a split brow tine, which is really awesome. And again, seeing the differences between the antlers is such a fantastic detail in this game, and something I feel a lot of modern hunting games miss out on. You can have these deer in this game that aren't perfectly even, but they still look natural, which is something that I feel like in a lot of modern hunting games, if an animal has uneven antlers, it looks really weird quite often, but this looks really sort of natural and like, you know, they do still belong to the same deer but have just grown slightly differently, which is really, really cool. Drop this guy on the spot as well, and taking a look, he has sort of that bigger but more spindly frame, not quite as much mass, but like I said, I really love that split brow. That's such a cool little detail. This guy scores 192.731, so like I said, if he maybe had some more mass, he'd probably score higher, seeing as he had that really nice big wide frame, but still an awesome buck. Now, moving on to this guy, which is so exciting for me. This is my first record book non-tip. Now, this guy is an 11 total points non-typical, and you can see he has kind of a drop time going on there. Again, he's not got a perfectly even rack. You can see one side has a much bigger brow than the other. One antler is just generally bigger as well. And he's just a really cool looking deer, and seeing that record book pop up when I saw that he was a non-typical was so cool. Now, once again, I felt pretty good about that shot, but this guy didn't drop, and thankfully, even though I lost sight of him, he'd gone into the brush and only again gone really a few meters before he'd gone down. And taking a look at him on the ground, you can see he has that nice big wide frame again. Not tons of mass, he's got some good mass in the main beams though. And, you know, unfortunately we can't see the drop time that he had on the other side. But he scores 199.994. One of my biggest mule deer bucks ever in this game. Such a cool buck. I was so excited to end up getting him. Now, moving on to the next deer, and this guy had the highest estimate I had seen on any record book mule deer. This guy is a 13 point non-typical, and he had an estimated value of 200. So this guy I knew could be one of my biggest deer ever. And taking a look at that rack, those split tines, That is such a cool looking set of antlers. What an awesome looking deer. Now, I could tell that the frame wasn't perhaps as big as some of the other record book bucks I had shot, but with those extra tines, I was hoping that that would push his score up. Now, once again, felt pretty confident about that shot, but didn't get the drop animation and the bullet count. Now, once again, it wasn't a very long track, he hadn't gone very far at all, and he'd actually sort of fallen down into this dip. Thankfully, it was a nice, easy track, and we ended up finding the deer at the end of it. But check out those split tines. Really, really cool. Decent mass as well on those tines and those main beams. A really cool looking buck. And he scores 195.327. So actually not one of our biggest deer. He's still a really good deer, but not one of our biggest record books. And being a non-typical, I always find that extra cool. Then we have this guy. A 9-point typical with an estimate of 189. And he is wild looking. He has so much mass and such long tines. That is a really, really cool looking buck. It's such an awesome looking deer. Now, I've got to be honest with you. When he led down there and I was scoped in, I was waiting for him to stand up. And I misclicked and accidentally actually shot him. Now, obviously, we didn't get the bullet cam there. But as you can see, again, he did not go very far before he actually went down. So I lucked out big time with that shot. It was a complete accident. I'm not great on keyboard and mouse. I play most of the games I play with a controller. And yeah, I just misclicked, which was really unfortunate. But check out the mass. Especially going through that second tine there that looks like a dagger. It's absolutely huge. Now, he's not obviously got quite as many points as some of the other bucks, but really good mass in a really good frame. And he scores 191.428, so not one of the biggest record bucks that we've had, but still a really, really solid buck. Now, moving on to the next deer, and we have this guy. A 10-point typical with an estimate of 194. He's got a really nice frame. Not incredibly long tines. I mean, they're decent, but not as long as some of the other bucks that we've seen. And not the widest frame or biggest frame compared to some of the other bucks that we've seen. But still a really solid-looking record book buck. And, once again, managing to drop him there with the 300. Taking a look at him up close, he does have decent length on those tines. They're not, like I said, quite as long as some of the other ones we've seen, and don't have quite as much mass, but still solid mass and solid length. So I was hoping this guy would score decently. And I really, really love his slate grey coat with that dark black cap on his head. Really, really beautiful deer. He scores 186.024, so kind of what I expected, not as high scoring as some of the other deer in this video, but still a really nice record book buck. And finally, moving on to the biggest buck I have found so far, an 11-point non-typical. This guy is absolutely huge. Now, when I first spotted him, I'd actually spooked him, and I ended up having to track him and eventually found him hiding away in all of this thick brush. But I could just see that he was giant when I first saw him running away, and then getting a closer look at him, he is just massive. And I had really, really high hopes that this guy was going to score well. I could see he has some serious mass and some really wicked tines. So I had a lot of hope he was going to score really quite high. Now, the only shot he presented after waiting here for ages was that really kind of heavily quartering away shot. Now, I figured I was using a 300 and I kind of took a risk that that should be a decent enough shot to bring this guy down, but I guess in this game it probably doesn't factor in those kind of shots, and it wasn't enough to bring this guy down. Thankfully, I was able to follow the blood tracks and just go off of where I'd last seen him running, and managed to find him not all that far away, and now he's out in the open, and I knew I should be able to get a much better and much cleaner shot and be able to bring this guy down. And sure enough, that second shot drops him on the spot, and I thought it's kind of fitting for a buck like this to just tank that first shot and then run off, and then we have to go and find him. You can see the blood trail to where he was, and thankfully that is what led us right to him. But take a look at that frame. Just incredible, so huge, so much mass. He's got some nice split tines. He looks really, really fantastic. And I was super relieved that I actually managed to get this guy down with that second shot. And picking him up, he is our highest scoring record book buck so far at 206.971, which is just awesome. I really, really love the different racks in this game. Like I said, for the deer, the fact that they can have so much variation is incredible. But the non-typicals for me have sort of a special place in my heart. I really love non-typical deer. I just think they are absolutely fascinating, both in real life and in hunting games. So for our biggest record book buck so far to be a non-tip is really, really cool. Now, my main goal is to go through this game and get at least one world record buck for each of the species in this game, but I'm really happy with what we've done so far, taking a good amount of record book bucks for the mule deer. I'm probably going to move on to whitetail and see what I can get for those next, and that will probably be what happens in the next video. But that is going to be it for this one. I hope you enjoyed this first Deer Hunter 2005 video. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Like I said, it is an older hunting game, obviously from 2005, but I feel like even now it's still such a fantastic hunting game with, like I said, so much incredible variation for antlers, which is something I feel that we miss in a lot of more modern hunting games. So it's something that I was really excited to play, and I'm really, really pleased that we managed to get it up and running, and I'm really enjoying playing it so far. But that is going to be it for this video, so thank you so much for watching and for all your support as always, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.